Good afternoon and welcome to our Saturday Sports Special, the weekend edition of Talk Sports, where we chat with the movers and shakers of sports, the sportsmen, the sportswomen, administrators, both present and past. Today, we have a special guest, a guest who will not only bring context to our continued discussion on sports development in the Caribbean, but also because of his experience of many years of service, both public and private, in the Caribbean community or CARICOM. Well, I welcome today on our program the president of Cricket West Indies, Richard Ricky Skerritt, to our program. Well, he joins us live from sunny and beautiful, and at times I will say, from where I'm actually broadcasting from, have to be a very jealous. Same kits, as I say. Good afternoon to Mr. Skerritt. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Michael. A pleasure to be with you. And,
Yes.
and let me say, guys like you who live and have to go through the cold, because you're Caribbean and your heart is always warm and your spirit is always lively, I know that you handle it well. Of course, that's why I'm not living there.
Yeah, I know. Well, thank you for joining us. And as you may have heard, folks, and read over the past few weeks, Mr. Skerritt is actually seeking re-election for a second term when the Cricket West Indies, when the board meets on 2 Sundays from now. That's March 28th. Well, he has already received firm support from the cricket boards of Trinidad and Tobago and the Leeward Islands, and hopefully both Jamaica and Windward Islands, the cricket boards, they have already thrown some level of support in his direction. But we want to spend some time on this program on reflecting on Skerritt's administration's first term in office, a term that probably is characterized with challenges, including, we cannot forget that, the global pandemic. So he'll speak about how his administration was able to, maneuver and at least accomplish some of their plans in the first term. No doubt there were challenges and he will speak on it. But the first question to which could set the stage for, I think, is the discussion is, why, Mr. Skerritt, why you and Vice President Kisho Shalom have announced a bid to seek a second term at the hand of West Indies cricket?
Well, first of all, I understand you have a good viewership in Grenada, and I want to take this opportunity, forgive me for jumping the gun here, and saying a special hello to Dr. Rudy Webster, who hasn't been well recently, and I hope he knows how much we have been praying and hoping for his speedy recovery. Rudy is one of the brightest cricket brains in the Caribbean and has been something of a mentor to Kisho and myself from time to time. I just want to wish him all the best, he and his family all the best. But to get back to your point, Kisho and myself came into Cricket West Indies leadership 2 years ago with a 10-point plan. We have made progress on every one of those points, but there are only about 4 of them that we feel that we have gotten into a state of sort of continuity, of sustainability. The other 6 still need a lot of our attention. Not that we expected to achieve all 10 to a completion in 2 years, but the pandemic, as you said, did cut back on some resourcefulness and some affected our ability to get as much momentum as we wanted on all fronts. So we have reshaped our 10-point plan to be the Cricket First plus 10-point plan, because we have stuck in a couple of other areas that we want to get done in the second term that we didn't have at all in any focus on our first term. So we are continuing, we're seeking support to continue, because We think we've done a good first term, and we know that one good term deserves another. So we believe that with the momentum and the progress that we have so far achieved, that we would be able to take it much further and deeper into outcomes that we need to move West Indies cricket onto a more sustainable basis.
And, speaking about, the challenges that you would have faced during this first term, and, what a time for this global pandemic, when probably for most people, West Indies cricket was for many, a turning point, What would you summarize as some of the challenges your administration faced during this first term?
Well, the first thing we faced was a sense of misalignment at the executive level. It didn't take me more than a few days to figure out that we just had some massive administrative problems right within our own organization. We had a chief operations officer who reported directly to the president, and we had a CEO who seemed to report to both the president and the chief operations officer. So technically you had two CEOs in the organization. Now, how that came about, one can only speculate. And there was no sort of united front in the leadership, in the executive leadership of the organization. And there was just a lot of issues that were surfacing. Issues, unfortunately, related to procurement, related to especially to cash flow and cash management. And the priorities seemed completely confused and upside down. And so it forced me to get into a sort of executive review of our financial system immediately. And so we hired a company called PKF, Global Associates, and asked them to do a quick review for us, and to end up basically doing a business situation assessment, because there were things jumping out at us which we didn't understand and which were suspicious. That report made 28 recommendations, and so we've been very busy fine-tuning our financial management, and we've been overseeing, in effect, a financial turnaround of the organization. And especially in terms of our debt management. The organization was very heavily in debt. It still is reasonably heavily in debt, but we have made a lot of progress. That was an area which I didn't expect. I didn't expect that we would be spending so much time on matters of financial management. I was expecting to spend a lot of time on cricket management. And we have made a lot of progress on cricket management. But, once the pandemic came along, we couldn't play any cricket. For several months, we literally could not play any cricket. The first cricket that we played was overseas, our obligations. And to bring a team together, prepare it, to take it overseas was virtually impossible. And that has been the nature of the game. One of the things we did was we put together a financial strategy advisory committee made up of people of financial expertise inside and outside the board. And we said, take a look at our situation in the context of the PKF report, which had fortunately just come to us a few months before the pandemic. And we said, take this PKF report and turn it into a business continuity approach. And we came up with measures that could keep us in business in the midst of the pandemic with no revenue and so on. I mean, we could go on to discuss that if you want to get into more detail, but basically it was about survival. And then Now it's about, continuity. And we have done an amazing job in difficult circumstances.
Well, speaking about difficult circumstances, it begs the question, how then that, with all that you have mentioned, that CWI has been able to survive, maintain the ship, and now we, from one tour to another, England, New Zealand, and now you're hosting, Sri Lanka. So with all these challenges, how do you explain?
First of all, those were all obligations under our Future Tours program with ICC.
Right.
So, but there was great cooperation in each case. In the case of England, for instance, the English Cricket Board gave us a short-term loan, which was crucial to our cash flow and our ability to meet obligations, especially with players. Players had been in a backlog of payment before our time. And we had been trying to keep the cycle going so that the players could constantly be paid. And then fortunately, we came up with this strategy that we didn't want to lay off anybody. We couldn't, we had 110 players on the contract. We could easily have gone to the Players Association, the players' representatives, WIPA, and said, look, we just can't meet these obligations anymore under the circumstances because we're not earning any revenue from any international cricket. And can we lay off some players? We could have done the same thing with the staff, but we decided we didn't want to lay off anybody. So we asked everybody to take a 50% pay cut. We got criticized for that by some of these same opponents who are now coming up against us. And we worked our best resources into maintaining the commitment of paying folks at 50%. We were attacked in the media for doing that, but we did not lay off one soul. And it was part of our strategy to cut our costs, obviously. One of our biggest expense is payroll. I could tell you, between 2000 and 2019, Cricket West Indies spent over $250 million, US dollars, on payroll. That was more than a third of our income, $700 million. So Cricket West Indies has had a lot of money in our hands, but we haven't always used it well. What this pandemic forced us to do is to understand how to use resources well. Everybody understood that a sacrifice was needed, but everybody also understood that financial management was now a crucial part of our responsibility, and that we couldn't assume, like had been happening before, that we would constantly have this money coming at us out front that we could spend before we even got it. So the discipline necessary for cost management, for cash management, is what we have now brought to Cricket West Indies.
Okay. And what would you say, Mr. Skerritt, some of the things that you and your administration would have liked to accomplish during your first term that you probably didn't get to accomplish? What are some?
Well, I would think that the issue of exposure for our emerging players, our under 19 players, and our emerging players under 23, under 19, and so on. We wanted to have a program of getting them traveling, playing more cricket internationally, being better prepared for international service as they later on, as they get into the senior team. We would have wanted some more women's cricket. We appointed Courtney Walsh as our de facto director of women's cricket, and we beefed up the team that's working on women's cricket, and we've been able to have just one significant camp since, which we just finished in January, but at the end of January. But we wanted the women's team to be touring some more. So far we were only able to do one tour, and that was to England, and that was courtesy of the English Cricket Board, who undertook most of the costs of that tour. The women have not really been able to play much cricket. We wanted to have an under 19 tournament by now, Again, this year, we had one in 2019. We are hoping to have it again in 2020, but all of that, the key tournaments that would normally prepare our young cricketers, we just haven't been able to do it because of either the COVID itself, travel restrictions. Air transport has been a significant problem in the Caribbean, as you know, the loss of Leeward. I mean, people have taken these things lightly, but they affect the ability to move cricketers around and cricket officials, and at reasonable cost. Leeward, we owed Leeward money when Leeward folded. We had just paid them some money not long before, but Leeward has been an excellent partner to Cricket West Indies. We were on the verge of signing a major memorandum of understanding with Leeward. And so it's been very difficult on all fronts. Everywhere we turn, there were challenges. But I'm happy to say that we have been able to create this biosecure bubble in collaboration with the ECB. We are the pioneers in that, you know. You hear it happening all over the world now. But we are the pioneers. We were the first ones to partner with the ECB and prepare what we call a biosecure bubble, which is now the model that is used all over the world. We have used it since in the CPL. We've used it recently, obviously, and we're using it right now.
And talking about the biosecure bubble and the partnership with the ECB, your administration has, been criticized for that partnership with the ECB. Your opponents have been clamoring that you probably would have given up millions of pounds. And in defense, you're saying that strategically, it was probably the right and the best decision at the time.
Well, no, yes, but I'm also saying that extortion is illegal. Extortion is corruption. We don't get into extortion. My opponents have come out and said it. Remember, these are board members, so they opposed our tour to England. And they criticized us for not extorting money from the English Cricket Board in order for us to go to England. Well, first of all, that, as I said, is not allowed. I mean, it's against the spirit and the rules of the Future Tours program. The only people who make money out of a tour is the host, other than with your own sponsorship. So us going to England benefited our major sponsor, Sandals. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that. England is a major market for Sandals. Sandals is a world-class hospitality organization, and they sponsor us. And wherever we go, we take their brand with us. And so going to England helped to meet our agreement with Sandals to continue promoting their brand, because if we're not promoting their brand, they're not going to pay us. So first and foremost, going to England benefited us financially from our arrangement with our major sponsor. So, I mean, we benefited. Secondly, we got the ECB to allow us to bring a significant number of A-team players. I don't remember the numbers, but I know we had over 30 players in England at one time. I can't tell you the exact number, but it was a lot. This was good exposure for a lot of our young cricketers. That augured well for their preparation and their growth. So even though they didn't play in the official test series, they were playing a lot of cricket. They were practicing a lot of cricket. They were net bowlers. They were standby players, etc., etc. So we benefited. The other benefit is we started negotiating since back then for their next tour to the West Indies, which is scheduled for January 2022, which is less than a year from now. And the goodwill that generated between us has now allowed us to even put on the table and get good traction on expanding that tour. Now, an England tour to the West Indies is always a very good thing for the West Indies financially and economically, because we get more money for the broadcast, which we own, because England has a much bigger and more lucrative cricket market. And countries like Grenada and others who host the England team get economic benefits from the tourism impact. So we have no regrets at all about how we handle the England situation. And I'll tell you, these guys don't seem to understand what extortion is, because maybe it comes that easily to them. But I don't extort money from anybody. I could tell you, if we didn't go to England, there were other teams that were ready to go. You may recall that Pakistan went to England. Australia went to England right after us. I mean, why would you think that we're the only team that can tour England? If a tour doesn't come off, the host country has the right to replace it with another tour if they can.
It was well noted that teams will actually line up to in case the West Indies had declined the offer.
Remember, just to clarify, it's not an offer; it's a schedule. There's a future tours schedule, and we know years in advance what tours we are supposed to make and what tours we are supposed to host. This particular schedule was put in place before my time. Our job is to implement the ICC Future Tours program. And going to England last summer was one of our obligations.
Yeah. And you identified some of the challenges you face in your first term. And now seeking re-election for a second term, Mr. Skerritt, what are the areas and plans for CWI under a Skerritt leadership, Skerritt administration for the next 2 years?
Well, look, we recently published what we call the 10-point Cricket First Plus plan. And six of the items have a derivative from the first plan. And four of the items from the first plan we feel have been pretty much completed. And if I could just run through quickly the four that we feel were completed. Please. One is bringing back cricket as the center of the organization. Two was the repair of relationships with stakeholders. Remember, the Cricket West Indies was in turmoil. We were constantly in some battle mode. Our past president was fighting just about everybody. And it wasn't healthy. We had governments upset. We had, we couldn't get sponsors because there was so much uncertainty about a lot of things. It was not a healthy situation that we found in terms of relationships. Well, we fixed most of those relationships and are well on the way to fixing those that may not be 100% at this point. There was a lot of mistrust and doubtfulness about the quality of selection. I'm talking about in the fans, in the public. I'm not bad talking anybody. I'm just saying, that people didn't trust the selection system anymore. They felt it had become very particular country-centric. They felt it was insularity at reign, and so on and so on. West Indians have never, ever totally trusted selectors. We have never believed that selectors were perfect. Every time there's a selection of a team, there's always criticism, but it had gotten to an all-time low. So when we got in office, we set about one of our objectives, which was to review the selection system. We have done that, and we think it is now stable, more trustworthy, but we will review it again. But at this point in time, it is not the highest priority on our list, because we have a policy published for the first time. We have credible and transparent decisions being made with a lot of data input, and we have selectors who understand that they need to explain their decisions to the public. They can't make decisions and hide away from them anymore. And the fourth one, where we felt that we made a lot of progress, was the utilization of regional technical expertise. We brought in our West Indians First policy, which is being adhered to in procurement and recruitment of staff. West Indians are getting first choice, not the only choice. It's not West Indians only, it's West Indians first. and we are getting the best possible West Indians to come and work for us, especially in the area of coaching and administration. Now, the 6 areas that the other 6 areas where we feel we still have work to do includes the coaching education program. That coaching education program, remember, we didn't have a coaching education manager. We hired one. We brought in a highly respected and sought after manager out of Western Australia, a guy called Chris Brabazon, who has now, his name is now a household name in the coaching sector across the region, because he and his people have reached over 400 coaches already just in the outreach in this last year since he's been on the job. We want to expand that tremendously. There's almost what I would call a renaissance in coaching that's going to be taking place. That's already begun and will be taking place. So, I mean, I could go on and on. The review of the professional franchise system is one that we have not been able to do. The professional franchise system, we've been able to beef up the fitness standards and implement the fitness standards, but we haven't really done a proper review of, and that is going to be one of our focuses going forward, even though it was on our list from before. Greater international exposure for our under 19 and our under 23 players. I told you that was one that we just didn't do, but we have to do that. That is a big part of our preparation of players. And the master plan for high performance. That is a crucial one. We now own CCG. We were able to renegotiate the price downwards by $1 million. US, by the way. We don't speak in any currency other than USD at Cricket West Indies. And we were able to complete the purchase. And so we now have to develop the CCG to its natural end, which is a hub for a network of high performance facilities across the region. And we have to fine tune and stabilize our financial relationships with the territorial boards. The territorial boards deserve to get assistance from Cricket West Indies, but it must be done in a way that is sustainable and is good return on investment, and not just handed out money without any accountability. But we believe once we get more financial stability within CWI itself, it's all designed to help to have the resources so that we can pay what is due to the boards, what has been promised to them before my time. These boards have been promised $300,000 each every year just for development. We only just started being able to pay the full amount within the last couple of months since our financial turnaround plan has been unfolding. But we owe them, hundreds of thousands of dollars that were not paid from some time back of that money that is supposed to be giving them money for development. We hope that that can happen on a more sustainable basis going forward. And in terms of new products, I would say we intend to spread the use of science and technology through the organization. We've done it with our athlete management system, getting players networking through their coaches and so on. We've done it with fitness and health, but we need to do it now on all front lines. We're doing it in the financial management systems so that we're automating just about everything. We need to do it with our HR management, and we need to do it with our communications. But we've made progress, but that's an area which we have to take it to best practice level. Fan engagement. Our social media program has been significant. But we need to now engage fans in the form of a fan club and other areas where we can actually earn some revenue. We're already earning revenue through YouTube and some of our productions, but there's a lot more we can do there. So, I mean, I can go on and on. But look, this is not just about plans, okay? This is about trusting the people who bring the plans forward. And we have shown that we can be trusted. We have shown that we are serious and committed to making West Indies cricket move up the ladder. And that is not something that we're going to ever take lightly.
Okay. And earlier this month, Cricket West Indies announced that what they describe as the widest ever access to live broadcast, radio and digital rights for West Indies fans in the Caribbean and around the world for the international home series against Sri Lanka. Mr. Skerritt, how is this fitting into the strategic plan of ensuring that the West Indies brand is relevant?
Well, I'm so glad you raised that, because let's start with radio, for instance. I mean, radio coverage of West Indies cricket had been at its lowest ebb. We had a situation where we had Cricket West Indies actually paying people. We had to pay broadcasters to pull something together for us so that we can get cricket actually on radio. There were some good people. There were some good people who were working out of Barbados and out of Trinidad, people who love cricket and who want to hear cricket and want to produce cricket, but they just couldn't do it on their own. They couldn't raise the cash that they needed from the network of radio stations. So we did what we have done with everything since, and that is we put out an RFP. Our procurement system now is so well put together that nobody, no organization, no company is going to just automatically supply to Cricket West Indies. Only the best will supply to us, and every now and again we'll have to check to see that they're still the best. And we've done it for the first time with radio. And a radio station out of Dominica, a station that a lot of people didn't know was so committed to sports coverage, Vibes Radio out of Dominica, came along, and in collaboration with associates elsewhere, they said, we think we can achieve this. And they have been doing an amazingly successful job. We are not making a lot of money out of it, but the point is it's not costing us any money. They may not be making a lot of money out of it at the moment as yet, but they're establishing a groundwork, a ground floor, or a platform from which they can grow. They now have about 10 or 11 stations in their network, and these are all independent stations, but they are working together so that Cricket West Indies can be carried across the region. Now, in terms of the television broadcast and the streaming and the other online broadcast services, we have basically gone out as well to tender all over the world in every market. And we are slowly but surely building out a network of broadcasters across the world who want to take our cricket and want to present it to their particular market. And that is why we say we're now being seen, even especially our domestic cricket. The Super 50 this year, as you know, was broadcast on ESPN across North America and across the Caribbean, but also on BT Sport, which is in England and Ireland. And of course, anywhere you have internet TV, you were able to, once you could get those channels, you could see it. So we had more people seeing Super 50 cricket last month than ever in the history of our domestic cricket.
Yeah, and no doubt, over the past 2 or 3 months, just about every few weeks, you're hearing some agreement. Cricket West Indies, whether it's Super Sport, BT Sport, ESPN, Sky Sports, I think in New Zealand. But interestingly, Mr. Skerritt is also the commentators in the region, the opportunity for West Indians to grow their careers, as you say, into the wider cricket industry, including the broadcast media, even among women.
Well, it's funny you say even among women. You know, women is not about even among women, is among men and women, because women's cricket is now cricket. So we have to understand that women's cricket is a crucial part of West Indies cricket. It's not an also run anymore. So we have to try to give the same opportunities to the women that we give, and to the girls that we give to the men and the boys. It won't happen overnight in terms of parity, but this idea of getting a couple of the women's team to try out in broadcast was a brilliant idea that came from in our commercial department and in our broadcast partnership. And when it came to my attention, I was ecstatic about it. I mean, I'll tell you, I don't care where the ideas come from. Once the ideas are good and they're helping West Indies cricket, because we need our past players to have a good career. We don't want our players to graduate into nothingness. We want them to graduate into a successful livelihood for the rest of their lives. We want our legends and our future legends and so on to live comfortable lives. And if we can help, even in a little way, we're not obligated to hire every past player to do anything. But we are hoping that all of our past players will find some way forward in their careers, whether it's broadcast or coaching or some other area. It may not even be in cricket, but we want them to be successful. And if we can provide one option for them in broadcast or some other way, then so much the better. And this is why the experiment with the women in the broadcast came about, because the world wants to hear women's voices alongside men's voices. Women's cricket is one of the fastest growing areas of cricket at the moment. And so more and more women are looking at, listening, and playing cricket than ever before.
Well said. I have some more questions, but if I can just go on to our comments page there. We are here as well. West Indies Cricket 2021 Cricket Group stands for you, Mr. President. That's Codlin Jr. And then Shadi is saying, I'm so grateful for the Facebook live stream, man. It has been so difficult over the years to see live games. I pray it gets easier. Obviously, I guess as much fans enjoying the interaction.
The fan engagement is crucial, because in the final analysis, why do we play cricket? We play cricket because of our love of cricket. We play cricket because it's an opportunity for professional development and for livelihoods. But who feeds that livelihood? It's the fans. If the fans are not looking at cricket, then the broadcasters are not having any revenues out of the advertisers and so on. So it's an industry. But in that industry, the partners that help to produce the talent at the local level, the governments, the local cricket associations and territorial boards, Cricket West Indies involved with standards and resources and helping, that partnership ultimately is to produce a product for the fans. Those fans, remember, the West Indies cricket team is not just loved by West Indians everywhere, as much as we are critical. But West Indies cricket team is loved all over the world. We are known as the second favorite team in other countries of the world. So people in India like West Indies cricket as number 2. People in Australia like West Indies cricket as number 2. People in England like West Indies cricket as number 2. New Zealand, and so on and so on. So the Cricket West Indies brand is in demand worldwide. And we have to make sure that the fans are happy in the way in which they receive the communications with the players and with the team's performance.
Yeah, I recalled some time ago, just after the tour of Bangladesh, that on the similar program, team manager Roy Lewis was saying how much demand for West Indies merchandise, on foreign tours, and it's just an indication of how much the West Indies brand is sought, especially out in Asia.
On the merchandise front, right? We made little or no money at all on previous merchandise arrangements because of all kinds of problems. We did the same thing with merchandise. We did an RFP, and we went through a process of selecting the company that we found was most suitable for our needs and our partnership. And just within the first 3 months of launching the product, the new clothing, we had more purchases online than we had had in the previous 5 years. So I mean, let's just say it's working.
Yeah, I love how you said that. Let me go on to one now that I'll have to read because it's quite a bit. Good afternoon. COVID-19 pandemic has decimated economies the world over. That's Robinson Henry. He's actually from St. Lucia, but resides in St. Vincent. Mr. Skerritt, will you seek to implement a program through which a certain percentage of CWI will make shares available to the West Indian public to purchase shares, which will raise millions of dollars for the development of the game in the region? That's a proposal which was first submitted to CWI in 2003 and was sent to the previous president when nothing was done. Yet we are facing cash flow problems to finance, and I think he probably went on to say some other things.
Well, the idea of raising money from the public is a nice idea. A lot easier said than done. Why would a public buy shares in Cricket West Indies? At the moment, it wouldn't be because of return on investment financially, because Cricket West Indies, over a period of time, loses money up until now. We're trying to fix that. We have good years and we have bad years, and we have more bad years than good years. So Cricket West Indies is not a viable investment for a genuine investor. But for somebody who just wants to help and want to donate some money and then never get it back, at the moment, that would be the case. I believe in another 2 or 3 years, Cricket West Indies will be a viable investment. Now, at the moment, we have people, including our opponents, who feel that the present ownership structure of Cricket West Indies, of the territorial boards owning, is all that matters. They don't want any partnership with governments. They don't want any partnership with the media. They don't want any partnership with fans. That's the history. That's their history. So understand that there's a lot of opposition to this idea of opening up and being transparent and getting accountability to the West Indian public. So it takes a mindset, but it also takes a financial plan. And we are bringing a financial plan. We've just purchased CCG, which is a 16-acre of prime real estate in Antigua and Barbuda, including a wonderful cricket facility, which is the base of what it will always be. And we have a partnership with the government of Antigua and Barbuda. And as soon as we can get through this pandemic and we can sit down and spend a little more time brainstorming with the government and so on, we're going to have some exciting plans for CCG. And that could be a real opportunity for investment across the region. But as I said, in principle, nice to do, a little bit more awkward, but let me just tell the person, it's back on the table. It's not, I don't know what happened in 2003. All I could tell is in 2003, I was manager of the team, and we were winning a little bit more then than we have. we had some world stars, Brian Lara and some others, and we were not doing as well as we had been in the past, but we were still winning, and we still had a little bit of viability. I think Cricket West Indies has been through a lot of changes since, and those changes are continuing. But I think this stabilization, this sustainability is being achieved very soon.
Okay. We have a question here, curious about President Skerritt's views on recent series victories. Were we lucky are on a growth path? Chenny Joseph, in fact, he is actually the president of the Grenada Football Association and a member of the Caribbean Football Union.
A little bit lucky in one or two drop catches. That's how cricket is. I mean, when Jason Holder was dropped in the first in the first match on the boundary, and I mean that could have been in a close game. That could have been a difference. But are we winning because of luck? No. We are winning because we are playing very good cricket. We are being more thoughtful in our decisions out on the cricket field, and we are showing a lot of teamwork and enthusiasm that seems to have been missing in the recent past. We have good leadership. We have players who are well prepared for playing at home. They just came out of a fairly significant Super 50 period. They've been focusing on cricket quite a bit for the last few months, and the players always play better at home. The home team always has a little bit of an advantage on home conditions. And we're playing against a team that is not that far ahead of us in the performance table. In the T20 series against Sri Lanka, we were ranked at number 10 before we just beat them. We've been ranked at number 10 since 2019. We went from number 3 in T20 cricket to number 10 between 2016 and 2019. So we've been on a bad decline. We just turned that around by beating Sri Lanka. And we have now gone up, as a result of that, to number 8 in the ICC table, right? We just won only the second ODI series, right? Only the second ODI series since 2014. So we're probably going to go up the ladder a little bit as well. In Bangladesh, we did almost the undoable. We beat Bangladesh at home in Test cricket. Not in a 2-match series, we beat both matches. That doesn't happen in Bangladesh in the last 10 years. So all of that cannot be luck. A lot of it has to do with the fact that the players are being better prepared, physically and mentally. The players are fitter than they have ever been. All of the players, 110 players across the region, are being forced now to be in better physical shape than they have ever been. And so I think physically and mentally, the players are better prepared. That is now. The question is, can we sustain that? And can we then be so competitive that we can beat teams that are further ahead of us in the table? We will see that over the course of this year, because we are going to play against South Africa, we're going to play against Australia, we're going to play against Pakistan. Those 3 teams are all ahead of us in every one of the format tables. So the real test to see whether we have begun the turnaround or not. Now, I believe we have begun it, but we have a steep slope to climb. Are we going to stay on that slope? We will know over the course of this summer.
And talking about that, over the course of time, Mr. Skerritt, could you recall when last Cricket West Indies, in terms of the West Indies team, had so many players available for selection, that is making it so difficult for even the selectors? I mean, so many players we have now in the region who are vying for selection and vying to be on the first team.
Well, I'm glad you raised that, because I haven't seen it for a while, but I tell you what brought it out was when 12 players made themselves unavailable to Bangladesh. My opponents, my critics said, why is he allowing the tour to take place? If these players don't want to go, it can't be safe. Well, we had verified safety. We had sent a medical team and a security team to Bangladesh. We were confident that the risk was as low in Bangladesh for our players as it had been in England and New Zealand, where we had already toured. Because the bubble that we had helped to create was intact, and we had verified it. So we knew it wasn't going to be a significant risk. However, players had the right. We had said it in our policy, they didn't have to go. But when 12 players couldn't go, in the past to England, I think it was just 2 or 3 players, to New Zealand, just 2 or 3 players. But all of a sudden now it was 12 players. So it was making the news. And my attitude was, but we contract about 110 players. If we contract 110 players and 12 people are not available, why can't we find enough players to go to Bangladesh? And we said to the selectors, only if you tell us that you cannot field a team will we not have this tour. We will not call off this tour until the selectors tell us otherwise. And credit to Roger Harper, Miles Bascom, and Phil Simmons. They said, Mr. President, we have enough players to go on tour. And I said, is the management team ready to go on tour? Phil said, yes, the management team is ready to go on tour. There was one member of the management team who had some underlying conditions and therefore couldn't go. But basically, credit to the selectors, because the selectors are the ones who basically call this tour on, because if they had told us no, the tour would not have taken place. We were satisfied with the protocols and the health risk, but it was the selectors who we left to decide on which players were the best ones to go. And obviously they made mostly good choices, because you see what happened. We didn't do very well in the early ODI games, and then we did brilliantly in the test cricket. But now what it has done is has shown all players, including the 12 who didn't go, that they have to compete heavily for their place. And when you have to compete for your place, you're going to work a little bit harder. And it is working harder that is what was required. One of the things that was required to lift West Indies cricket. So the harder work is taking place. West Indies cricket is being lifted.
Mm-hmm. And back to the questions now. Well, this question is actually from a face that you're very familiar with, a name, Glenys Roberts, your former tourism minister, tourism minister. And she said Basque, she referring to me. I am thinking to ask President how best can stadium be utilized to live out its relevance outside of an international tour. Therefore, we need to find a way to get countries to utilize the stadium more for domestic use.
First of all, let me say what a pleasure it is to hear from Glenys, who was a minister while I was a minister, and we worked on behalf of the Caribbean brand together. But she raises a very important point, because she was in a government that helped to fund a major stadium and so on, and the Grenada government, through successive governments, have faced the issue of running a stadium and keeping it active even when there's no international cricket. It's the big issue across the region. How can we get enough activity to justify what our expenditure on construction and maintenance has been? There's no profitability in stadiums, but they're all national treasures, because even if you have just one or two events that needs a stadium, then it's worth having a stadium. So governments are going to have to budget for a minimum level of maintenance of the stadiums that they own. But they can also do a lot more with the stadiums if they generate their own events. There's some events that are natural, like carnival, music festivals, and so on. But you can promote sporting events internationally. You can host regional events, but you have to be aggressive. You can't just sit back and wait. We were fairly aggressive in St. Kitts when I was minister. We I was Minister of Sports and Tourism, and that helps. Sports and tourism need to work very closely together. But I think there's a lot that can be done with stadiums as long as the stadiums are well kept and well promoted.
Okay. We have some more to get in, and still we have some comments coming in there that I want to get through to. But you spoke about the alliances, especially with the ECB, for example. But even closer to home, we have USA Cricket, which a lot is happening with USA Cricket in terms of development, both male and female. And the question is alliances with USA Cricket and other non-playing cricket nations in the Caribbean. We know of Cuba, for example, with their sports medicine. When we had the St. George's Cricket Academy, the Cubans provided support in terms of fielding, coaches, etc., etc. The Bahamas, Suriname, all part of the Caribbean community. How do we use Cricket West Indies in forging these alliances to ensure that cricket is played not just in the Caribbean but even beyond the Caribbean and even closer? An example like USA Cricket.
You know that in our Super 50, normally, if it wasn't for the COVID restrictions and the attempt to shorten the tournament and so on, we've traditionally had a USA team and a Canadian team participating. That was supposed to happen this year. We ended up having one Canadian player. We have North American development players in our CPL tournament. That is a direct relationship between boards. That continued even last CPL in Trinidad. We have conversations taking place about women's cricket. Right now, the women's director on the Cricket USA board is actively in touch with me about how we can do more with girls cricket, which is an area that needs a lot of work on both fronts, both the USA and in the Caribbean. But more importantly, or not more importantly, but in a bigger sense, we are having conversations about joint hosting of international ICC events. We have already agreed in principle that USA Cricket and Cricket West Indies will put together a bid for a major international event. We haven't gotten to the point yet where we have any traction with that bid, but just be assured that USA Cricket and Cricket West Indies are talking about possible joint hosting of international events in the future. And that could very easily include Canada if it's held at the right time. So our focus is West Indies cricket. We're not in charge of USA or Canada cricket. They are associate members, we are full members. So we are the only full member in the Western Hemisphere. And so in terms of technical assistance and so on, we do our best to help. We do umpires training. We have had one or two legends go to events in places like Bermuda, Bahamas, Cayman Islands, and so on. We would pay part of the cost of that, and the host will pay the rest. So there are ongoing relationships between that go. Some of the relationships predate me, but we have stepped it up, and we will continue to step it up. Obviously, COVID has changed a lot. It's slowed up a lot, and in some cases eliminated some things. But I just want to assure you that those of you, especially, North American cricket is a lot bigger than even I understood. There are so many people, mostly people from the Asian heritage, but also a fair amount of people from West Indian heritage in North America who are playing cricket. But we are very keen to do whatever we can to provide jobs for our people and to provide commercial relationships where we can. We already have, ESPN broadcast rights agreement is everything to do with broadcasting of West Indies cricket product into the the North American market. So the North American market is already being looked at as an important market for us.
All right. I know we're short of time because you have some other engagement, but there's some comments that are coming in. Congrats on involving some of the older guys and ex-players to be part of the way forward. And that's something I want you to develop on, Mr. Skerritt, the whole issue of the involvement of legends in particular in the development of West Indies cricket.
This is an area where, is an opportunity which has not always been fully utilized. I wish we could have done more. I think as we come out of COVID, and the whole idea is to get former players who are wise about matters to do with cricket, former players who understand and can see indicators that suggest to them what the solutions are, to get them engaged and to get them given advice and counseling, especially to younger players, or to those people who are in charge of helping younger players. We have several past players employed by Cricket West Indies now. Our director of cricket, Jimmy Adams, is a former West Indies captain. Our director of women's cricket, Courtney Walsh, is a former West Indies captain and a legend in his own time. Phil Simmons has played with some of the best legends and is head coach. Floyd Reefer, head of the Under 19 program, is a former West Indies captain and knows a lot of the legends personally. Anne Brown is a bit of a legend in her own way as a former women's player. She's a lead selector for the women's cricket. Roger Harper has played with the best and is a legend in many respects himself as lead selector. I mean, I can go on and on.
Let me add Raw Lewis, my Grenadian colleague.
Hey, how could we forget Raw? Raw is a crucial cog in the wheel of management for the West Indies team. He would like me to say that he's not a legend in the same basket as Sir Curtly Ambrose, but he certainly is legendary, and Rawl has done an amazing job. There are many others. But my point is that they don't all have to be full-time employees. We use them in different ways, and I should say, make use of their talents and their expertise and experience in many ways. Some we haven't, some we have. But we need to use them as much as we can. You're going to find that my opponents are going to promise all kinds of great things, and they're going to try to get some past player to endorse them and so on. I have never asked a past player to endorse me. I just give them all the respect and love that I can and give them opportunities when I can. But my respect and love for past players is, I don't have to talk about it. I have put it into practice over many years. When I was manager of the West Indies team, it was the first time that we had preparation camps. And in those preparation camps, we always brought in past players. The two favorite ones for me were Gordon Greenidge and Sir Andy Roberts, bowler, batsman and bowler coach. Roger Harper was our coach at the time. We have used others, but Clive Lloyd, I flew to England just to make a speech at Clive Lloyd's 75th anniversary. I mean, I don't need to boast about my own relationships with the past players. I have always admired them. They're my heroes. Sir Viv Richards gave me great joy as a fan. I've never felt better than sitting in the Antigua Recreation Ground and looking at Viv Richards perform. I mean, look, I'm cricket focused, I'm cricket centric. My opponents say that I'm cricket soft. They accuse me of being too soft on players. Well, I have absolutely no regrets of what I have done and will continue to do with players past, present, and future.
Okay. Back to some Omar Barkos is saying Skerritt took backward system and made it a forward system within 2 years. He needs another 2 to finish his forward thrust.
Can I hire Omar to be chairman of my campaign committee? Thank you very much.
Yeah, and it's important to Mr. Skerritt, because the question I wanted to ask you whether 2 years is sufficient, to do all that you plan to do.
Look, the Webby report, one of the proposals is for term limits, right? But it does also recommend that the term go to 3 years instead of 2. That was in their meeting with me. They met with several people who gave them, feedback. That was one of the recommendations which I endorsed fully, because I think 3 years is a more realistic term. And especially if you're going to happen to have some setback like the pandemic. So I think a 3-year term would have been most appropriate. I personally, I don't want to serve West Indies cricket longer than I can be useful. I don't think that any one president of West Indies cricket should stay on very long. So the 2-term, 6-year a term limit is to me fine. I don't even know if I would serve for 6 years. It's a very tiring experience. And if you can have continuity, then you should. At the local level, I think it might be a little bit different, because it's not always easy to find the right people at the local level. And if people are doing a good job at the local level and they can get reelected, that's fine. But at the regional level, I really think you need to have changes. You need to have diverse inputs, and you need to have the best people coming from all over the Caribbean. I come from a little island called St. Kitts. St. Kitts hasn't even produced a test player. And I come from a place where, cricket is not the most popular sport in St. Kitts, but we have some of the most ardent fans. Right. And you have ardent fans all over the Caribbean, and you have highly qualified people who can make inputs into cricket.
Yeah. Well, not just fans, as they also say that West Indies is one of the places where you can find the most selectors. Well, the fans.
And sometimes the small islands have a higher proportion of selectors.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, before we go, we lost a stalwart to West Indies cricket recently. I'm speaking of the late Clavis Joseph, and you took time off at least to pay respect to Mr. Joseph, his contribution to cricket in the Leeward Islands, Antigua, the Leeward Islands, and West Indies.
Well, look, one of the things that I like to speak about with Clavis, because you have to judge people based on the difference they made when they were there, not just the fact that they were there. But one of the biggest differences that Clavis made was that Clavis was able to approach his government under the prime ministership at the time of Lester Bird to help to move West Indies cricket from Barbados to Antigua. That was in 1996 is when I think the conversation took place. I don't know exactly when it commenced. I think it commenced somewhere by about 2 years later. But Cricket West Indies moved its headquarters from Barbados to Antigua because Clavis knew that they were getting some difficulty in sustaining concessions from the Barbados government at the time. The Barbados government hadn't quite agreed that Cricket West Indies should be treated as a regional organization. Well, the Antigua government said we would, and Clavis was the man who brought that to the attention of the West Indies Cricket Board, helped to negotiate the terms and conditions, which resulted in Cricket West Indies being headquartered in Antigua and Barbuda at the moment.
And as we get ready to wrap up in your segment, well, I see something just came in there. Let me just see if I can get it to you. So President Skerritt spoke of challenges with air travel in our region. What are his thoughts on engaging other sporting principles to engage governments and owning a regional airline owned by all of the major sporting disciplines in the Caribbean. Wow, that's a tall order, Mr. Skerritt.
I'm not touching that. I'm really sorry. You know, I mean, it's an election campaign, and I should say, oh yes, great, yeah, I think we could do that. But look, that's not what I do. A regional airline is a headache that Cricket West Indies has a vested interest in as a customer, but you know, we don't do the kind of constant moving of our people across the region to justify having planes sitting on a tarmac just for us. We spend a lot of money on regional air travel, and we can guarantee some kind of a purchase arrangement for air travel. But there's, you know, this is so huge in terms of capital investment and so huge in terms of route planning and so on, because the viable routes may not even be the routes that we want for our cricket, you know. So we tend to charter planes. So we need airlines that have planes that can fly special missions for us. So we have an interest, don't get me wrong. The Cricket West Indies needs to keep an ear to the ground and see how we can throw in our 2 pence, but not as a serious investor or serious owner, because that is not going to be easy to turn into and we don't have the cash to just pour into a hole like a regional airline.
Okay then, and finally, going into Sundays, I'm talking about Sunday, March 28th election. How confident is Skerritt and his team?
Look, I tell people that competition is healthy on the field and off the field. If this election is going to result in betterment for West Indies cricket, if better ideas are going to be put out there, then so much the better. But unfortunately, this election is about who can you trust to stay focused on cricket? Who can you trust to put the resources where they're needed most and not make knee-jerk, short-sighted, personalized decisions about Cricket West Indies resources. This is about delivering what you said you would deliver, and about making sure that West Indies cricket can live on and can keep the people of the Caribbean walking tall. And if you think that my opponents are the right people, so be it. But if you think that what we have done, not what we have said, what we have done shows that we're the right people, then thank you very much for telling the right people to vote for us. Because remember, there are only 12 votes. We believe that we have 8 votes in our support at the moment. But these people who we are against, or people who are against us, say that they are doing whatever they can to get the votes, and they will get the votes at all costs. So who knows? We believe that the people understand that we are best for West Indies cricket, and we're going to continue to do our best. And if we get the mandate to continue, the people of the Caribbean could be sure that West Indies cricket is in good hands.
Okay. And by way of clarification, the 6 territorial boards, and who are the others that make up the 12?
The 6 territorial boards are Jamaica, Leeward Islands, Windward Islands, Trinidad, Barbados, and Guyana. And each board has 2 votes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's how it goes for the 12. Yeah. Okay then. Well, I really want to thank you, Mr. Skerritt, and without any biasness, I know on Sunday we have the final. Well, West Indies already winning the series, the one-day series, and then onwards to the test. But what's your prediction, as not just as president of West Indies cricket, but as a fan of West Indies cricket?
You mean in the upcoming test series?
Certainly.
Look, our guys, our test players, under a newly appointed captain, coming off a victory in overseas in Bangladesh, they should be ready to perform well. But I tell you, don't write off Bangladesh. Remember, Bangladesh has a very well balanced team. They don't have the
Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka. Eh?
Sri Lanka. Bangladesh was the last series. Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, they don't have the power hitters that we have, and that helped to make the difference in the white ball cricket. But they have excellent cricketers, and I think they're going to be much more competitive in the test series. So you can expect 10 days of excellent cricket, and that's the most important thing. We believe the home team will win, but you know what? West Indians want to see our players working hard, giving up their best, and being proud to carry the West Indies logo on their shirts. And once our players do that, they're going to continue to get the support from the West Indian people.
Okay. I want to thank you very much, Mr. Skerritt, for being part of our program today. Although it's a bit short with you, because I could understand.
I apologize. I didn't realize that you were a full 2 hours, and I had made another booking. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. But I appreciate as much as possible, and I want to wish you good luck come March 28th. And no doubt, I want to support your vision for West Indies cricket. I personally have experienced a turnaround in West Indies cricket, the fortunes of West Indies cricket, after following it for many years. And as I indicated to you, gone are the days of the petty squabbles and the fish market noise, as we'll call it. And we are seeing real action, even though for some people they believe that it should be, quick timing, But bearing the circumstances, bearing the challenges, I think you have done quite a bit.
I wish you were a voter, Michael.
Yeah, well, I'll talk to Dwayne Gill.
Thank you. Put in a word for us.
Certainly. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, and good luck. Continue the dialogue. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay then. Yeah. So folks, that's it's Ricky Skerritt, live from St. Kitts. Yeah. Yeah. Live from St. Kitts. Well, they told me make sure I put St. Kitts and Nevis, right? That yeah. But no doubt, Mr. Skerritt and Mr. Kishore Shalom, they are vying for re-election as president and vice president, respectively, Cricket West Indies, when the board meets on March 28th, that's Sunday, March 28th, and we will hear more about that. We want to wish them all the best, and we want to wish West Indies cricket, I should say, all the best.